Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of the D Word. This is a special edition because yesterday we had a special guest who was the president of the NJLGBT Chamber of Commerce, and we couldn't get enough of all the juicy information that could help empower us as we move through in through our work and even in through our lives in the corporate career, and also, as I have mentioned, even just empower us with the knowledge to be able to move through in our lives being LGBT. And right here, also right now, joining us is an expert in law, divorce law, international law, and family law attorney Carolina Denhard, to give us some light on our legal rights, on ways we can be more empowered to be able to assert our place in the corporate world, and through, of course, the help of our amazing LGBT connection in here from the chamber, we'll be able to navigate the corporate world with more ease and confidence, knowing we rightfully belong there. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you once again, part two, Joseph Renga, President and board member of the NJLB LGBT Chamber of Commerce, and my co-host, Carolina Denhard, who's going to take the lead on this interview. Go ahead, guys.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us again. Obviously, there's so much to talk about on this topic. And although, as Furley said, we could talk about rights and what federal laws mean and what state laws mean, what I really want to focus on today is when we talk about growth and we talk about people entering into unions, whether it's personal relationships or professional relationships, there's so much consideration that needs to be given. And one of the things that my clients always ask that are part of the LGBT community is, Carolina, does it make sense for me to get married? Will that change my status as I build my wealth? Will it change my status and how I'm viewed in the community because now I'm part of a unit and a family and I'm married? Will that help me in the corporate structure because I'll be viewed as having to be in a committed legal relationship? Or is all of that really nonsensical, doesn't matter, and are really people making these decisions because they think they have to fit a mold? And I've been talking to a lot of clients over the last several years, since 2013, when the Supreme Court decision came down. And I'll tell you, it's always the same proven old adage. You want something you have, but then when it occurs, you really balance if it's something you really want. And I'll just throw this out there. I have a home in Bradley Beach, and I watched Long Branch and Asbury Park really turn into the community that it is over the last 14 years. And I've had a lot of conversations with business owners, homeowners down there, waiting for the Windsor decision, waiting for 2013 to happen. And then when it happened, saying, I now have stuff to protect. I've been single for my entire adult life. I don't know if this is the best thing for me to do. And I now see a dichotomy. I see people taking the plunge. And unfortunately, as for all of us, things ending in divorce. 1 out of 2 marriages end in divorce, notwithstanding where you fall on the spectrum. But others living together in these relationships without a formal commitment. And there seems to be a lot of dialogue about what that means. And Joseph, I wanted to pose the question to you, within your Chamber of Commerce, as people are struggling to grow their wealth and grow their careers, is this creeping up as a topic of, should I get married?
What I've noticed, and this is just as a casual observer, in friends that I know, people that I've met through the chamber, and people personally, what I find is that the people who got married, it comes into, there's so many different groups. You have people who were in very long-term relationships, 20 years plus, and in that group, some people did it because they could finally do it, and there was an importance to say, I am married. And then there were other people that I know who said, we don't need it. You know, it's nice to have, but after 20 years or more of being together, we've already set up our finances that work for us now, and nothing would really change, or it might be too much of a bother to go through it, particularly people who are in a category, let's say, of maybe 55 and older, who have different things to think about because now we're approaching the Social Security age, you know? And so I think really what I've noticed is that it's come down to really taking I don't want to phrase it this way, but taking a cold eye to the financial situation. Look at what you've got as two partners, how long have you been together? How invested financially are you together? And then just weigh it against what marriage means and what you get from marriage. I mean, there's certainly certain, I guess, tax benefits and credits and things that you can get for being married that are helpful, but you do have to weigh it against what you've built up over a long period of time, being single, never expecting that marriage was an option. So I think it's where you fall in the age spectrum first. About, it's like financial planning. When you're asked that, at what age are you starting it or thinking about it, and you change accordingly because time counts for everything in your strategy. So I think that's what a lot of people are looking at. And I think it really comes down to a money thing. It comes down to a math equation, basically, or let's say if one partner is significantly older than the other partner, what do you do? Or more established, that's another thing. It's the old adage of someone, 20, someone a certain age marrying someone very younger, and you have prenuptial agreements and things of that nature. Someone who's very, very established and they're 20 years older than someone who's not so established, but much younger. And that prenup comes into question. So now, ironically,
let me just chime in because you made such a good point before we move on to your next thought. When you marry and you're together, you're working toward, you mentioned Social Security, you're working toward that benefit, death benefit when somebody passes, or if you get divorced, you get to collect if you're married for 5 years on the other person's Social Security. So the largest frustration that I have seen is almost, so what if we get married now? We've been together for 20 years. No one's working toward the other's benefit of the other than whatever private money you've put aside. There's not going to be any federal support, because if we get married today and we were married for 5 years, those 20 years don't matter because you can't collect on that. So it's almost as if, has this passage of the law and providing equal rights, what has it really provided to people that were already in those 20, 25-year committed relationships? Is it more of a frustration now that, why did it take so long? We spent a life together. We built a life together. Why are we playing catch up to heterosexual marriages?
Well, I think you raise a point about what it comes down to, the concept of marriage itself, in and of itself, that concept of two adult people being of sound mind and body, getting married. And really, it's a legal agreement because you need a license for it. And why do that? If everything's working, I know couples who've been together for 30 years, and it didn't, it's great to have in theory, and that's the point. Marriage is great to have in theory because it shows absolute equality across the board. You have the option, and that's what you want, are options in life. You have straight people who've been together for years and don't get married. They don't need it. You know what I mean? So it really is the fact of having the options, all the fair options everyone else has, and then deciding, does it work for me or not? Again, based on your actual individual situations, like age and time and the accruement of how many years do we have together being married, and what does that matter financially, and I think you really have to, again, take a cold eye to it and a calculator and say, what are the pros and cons? And yeah, we should do it, or no, we shouldn't. I mean, you have people who've been together for years and they have all kinds of legal agreements based on the fact that they couldn't get married. So there's, investments together, investments separately. I've heard of, I don't know you personally, but I've heard of people who are married and heterosexual couples who keep their finances separate for whatever reason, because it's just legally smarter.
But it doesn't matter, because in New Jersey, what's in the marital pot from the day you say I do to the day you say I don't, other than there's a prenuptial agreement you mentioned, of course, or if there's inheritance, it's kept separate. But, one of the things that you just mentioned is very critical, because if somebody's together for 20, 30 years and everything's working and you have your arrangements and your agreements and, your blended families, whatever that may mean, and all of a sudden marriage is on the horizon and it's an option. Now we start thinking about, oh my goodness, I have more than you, or I want to protect this for my sister, my mother, whatever. We start talking prenup. And the concept of prenuptial agreements isn't always so loving and wonderful and filled with roses, because you're essentially talking about what's going to happen when the marriage falls apart. So what I've seen too, and it's an interesting phenomenon, is people that have been together for decades that now want to take this plunge because it's now afforded to them, end up fighting and breaking up, because the conversation becomes, well, when we're no longer together. I feel that when people are not afforded the rights of what they should be afforded, what they can't do, and it finally is available, it raises all sorts of issues with regard to, how are you viewed in the relationship? Am I really now an equal partner that you want me to sign this prenup? For all intents and purposes, we've built this together. Now we're talking about being separate. How do we now continue? And I've seen a lot of these relationships end because of the concept of getting married.
Yes, I agree. I mean, that is almost an unusual phenomenon. You know, people get married because they can, and then it's over in 3 years. And you kind of think, well, where was the relationship before if it only lasted 3 years because you had a marriage certificate? I mean, that's a curious thing to me. And I'm sure in the future studies will come out of it, deciding like, you know, were we together 5 years and we decided to get married because we could, and then we're divorced in 3. So it was really a 7-year relationship, as opposed to people who've been together for a total number of years, like say, again, 15, 20 years, and they're just so set in their ways that marriage is just another benefit to say, we finally got to do it because they've already sorted out those things. You know, that, like I said, I'm using 5 and 3, you know, that's 8 years, let's say, but you know, that 7-year itch, does that come into play for everybody, you know, if you've been together for 7 years and you just happen to get married in the 5th year because you could, and now after 2 years it's over. So the statistics, I guess, over a 10, 20-year period would be very interesting to see how long people were together as partners or a couple, and then they got married, and then how long did the marriage last after that? And I think from what I see, just as a casual observer, or I read somewhere, I think that people who are together for a shorter period of time as a couple and then get married, I think you're going to see divorce there, because people do grow over time. But if you've already been together for 15, 20 years, you already are really fleshed out as a human being at that point, and you're also rather older. You know, in theory, you're older. So I'm curious to see what the statistics will show in 10, 15 years.
I always explain to my clients that similar to heterosexual couples that want to live together for years, right? That 8, 10 years are living together. They meet in college, they're in their 30s, now they want to get married. And then they get divorced 5 years later, to your point. You can't tag on those 10 years you were together. It doesn't work in any scenario, right? So marriage starts from the day you get married. And a lot of people, whether it's a lack of understanding of the law or thinking there's common law, which doesn't exist in New Jersey, you know, or basically saying that there's a fairness argument that if we were together for so long, that piece of paper should not erase all those years before. But we're dealing with the legal system. How can a court of law now step in to see what you were doing when you were not legally bound by marriage? So there's so many questions. But I think that the overall theme that I'm seeing as a divorce attorney is that divorce is really quite on the rise in this community. And I don't know if it's, as you said, that people just did it and now there's so many issues, or if it's just like anybody else. You know, you thought you wanted something and then it just doesn't work.
Joe, may I say something? Yesterday during our interview, you were saying that, you know, in the Chamber of Commerce, you find yourself actually referring a lot of cases or situations to divorce, not to just divorce attorneys, but to attorneys within the chamber. I'm trying to remember what that particular scenario is.
The scenarios that have come up for me, where people have asked for a referral of an attorney, have been one was a case of someone having a roommate who the roommate was straight and didn't realize this person was a member of the community and were, I guess, homophobic, and that person was looking for help. They were looking for a realtor to get out quick, and then they were looking to talk to a lawyer just in case issues like a deposit came up and could they get it back and that kind of a thing. And then the other case was someone who really felt that they were being harassed at work and being discriminated against, rather, because they were a member of the community. And in that scenario, the person was not necessarily out at work. It was like someone had suspicions about them, a superior in the organization, and felt, you know, that person felt they were being, you know, targeted, even though they were never out to anyone officially to say, you know, I'm a gay person and what have you. So those are the scenarios that we come up with. We haven't come up with anybody, or I should say we haven't come up with, no one has approached us looking for an attorney for a divorce scenario, but we do have married couples who join the chamber, or one joins the chamber, and, you know, you meet people and they bring their spouse. And what I find is that when you look at the, again, I'm a casual observer here. I'm certainly not a professional in this, but what I see coming into the chamber is a business owner. It's someone who is higher educated, tends to be higher education, a college graduate. They have a business. Their partner may or may not have a business. I mean, we see all scenarios. They're in business together. One has one business, one has another. One's in business for themselves, and the other partner is in corporate America. And I've also seen scenarios where in our chamber, where one partner is from the United States and the other's from another country. And in all scenarios, though, that I have met, if I have been introduced to with regard to the chamber and the people who are followers, our constituency, our members and our followers, everything was very well thought out. So they are careful. Now, I don't know why that is. And again, I think it's because you have to be you have to be a savvy person to be able to run a successful business. You have to really think about things. And so I think that naturally falls over into your personal life, especially if you're bringing someone over from another country to live here. And I find that everything has been well thought out with these couples about one being from another country, one being from here. One partner in the couple has their business and that's their road in life. That's what they want to do. The other is a corporate person and they're going up the corporate ladder, as we try to do if you're going to be in corporate America. So the thing I do find is that they've thought it all out and they've really made a considered decision on who does what, So it's very interesting in the people who come to the chamber. They're very pointed about what they want from the chamber. And then you just realize in life and as people, they're very mindful and very thoughtful about what they do in all aspects of their life.
I can tell you that as being an immigrant from Poland, Furley and I always joke about this, English is our second language for the both of us. Mm-hmm. When you come into a new situation or when you are in a class of people where your rights are limited or where you have limitations on what you can do, you tend to get information more than the average person. Mm-hmm. You tend to think things through. You tend to try to get around certain limitations so you could achieve your goal. And I will completely agree with you that the common theme in the LGBT community has been that there's been so many struggles for so many decades that people really have to think about what they want, or at least be open-minded to getting the information, because there's got to always be a way out. There's got to be an answer.
Yes, I think being in a minority group, right, you're much more aware of how you have to protect yourself. And I think people who come here from another country, like in the scenarios that I've outlined that I'm aware of, they've done their due diligence even before they've made the move to come to this country or to bring a child over and their partner is a citizen of the United States. So, you learn, I think as a community, we've learned to be, being in the closet is you become a very observant individual when you're closeted. I know because I was for a very long time. As I admitted to Furley yesterday, I came out late in life. I was 42, and I spent almost all of my career in corporate America. And you do learn to read the room when you have to feel like you've got to protect yourself. And I think anyone who comes in this scenario, I think I'm pretty much sure does their due diligence about how can I have the easiest life in the United States or any country. If you're going to, be an expatriate to any country, how do I make it work for me where I'm not discriminated against? It's not tough to do things.
Yeah. Furley and I always talk about giving back to the next generation. And for those individuals that are, let's say, 45 plus, they've been in this for quite some time. They lived a life where the rights weren't afforded to them. They now have those rights afforded to them. And they've done the dance for a lot longer than people that are maybe in their 20s just starting out right now and, living in a new world where marriage is afforded to them. And essentially there's so many more opportunities. I feel that it's critical for us to, through the Chamber of Commerce and all other platforms, to educate. What does it mean to have children now? What does it mean if you have a carrier, a surrogate? Do you have to readopt? What does it mean if you move from Florida to New Jersey? What about international travel? What about if somebody's an immigrant? And I think that we have an obligation through our colleges, through our associations, through our chambers, to present these topics, involve the younger people, hear their voice, so that we shape policy in Washington, for decades to come, because quite frankly, 2013 was not that long ago, and states are still trying to figure all this out. So how do we now build a stronger next generation? And Joseph, through your chamber, do you have younger members joining, startups, people that are looking to start businesses? Is that something that's happening that you're watching?
Yes, we do have younger members. I think what you touched on is really important because it's about life experience. And if you are younger and you're just out of school or you're just starting out and you're trying to establish yourself in some way, shape, or form, experience is all the difference in the world. And I think, you know, when you do reach an age like myself, definitely middle-aged, it's really fun to give back, let alone important. It's fun to say, okay, this is how I did it, and this is what you have to watch out for, you know, A, B, and C. Because it comes down to how much experience. And it is such a benefit to someone of my generation that I was, or any of us that were there before you could get married. Because you know what it was like before, and now you understand what it's like now. Whereas anyone who's now 22, they don't know anything else but that they can get married if they want to, you know. And you had the experience of saying, "Well, I knew what it was like then." I mean, it was like I find it fascinating to talk to people who were living an LGBT lifestyle, closeted maybe, but living it before Stonewall. And just that ability to say, I was there before and I was there after, and I know how to work both sides of that defining moment. I think those people are fascinating. I have a number of friends who are in their 80s, and they were there for everything. And it's just fascinating to talk about the differences. I mean, you only knew if someone was gay if you literally met them on Fire Island by accident. I mean, that's how you figured it out, because it was never brought up in an office. No one, even on the down low, said, "Oh, you know, maybe we should go out and have a drink or something, or coffee." Nothing like that. You only knew it if you found someone. So to go from that to now, where now marriage seems like, you know, I mean, what a silly thing. We can't get married. That's ridiculous. And finally, that's the way it was looked at. But we do have young people coming into the chamber, and again, it's younger people just starting out in their early to mid 20s, who have tried to put themselves on a career trajectory. They have thought about their career. If you look at their background and where they've gone.
Okay, we froze a little bit.
Such great information, Furley, isn't it? I mean, he really is such a wealth. Oh, you're back. You froze a little bit.
You know what I wanted to share with you? Actually, you know, I was, before my fabulous marriage to Christine, I actually was married to another woman. Tragically, I lost her to pancreatic cancer within 8 months of our wedding day. And one of the things during that time, it was not called gay marriage in New Jersey, it was civil union.
Right.
But I am actually very, very glad that we actually had that civil union, because it gave me the right to be there in the hospital as next of kin. It gave me the right to make decisions about her care, about her funeral. It didn't, at that point, it was not federal. And so my rights were basically limited to my state.
Correct.
And so, you know, but it was a big relief that I actually had been blessed with that right at that time, because it would have been so terrible if I could not even enter the ICU during the time if I was not an official next of kin or family. So that recognition, Caroline, I'm just wondering, basically, is it federal now? Are we able to enjoy the rights of any heterosexual rights for relating to marriage, like say for example, Social Security? Do LGBT couples basically are we entitled to all of that on a federal level?
So in 2013, when Windsor came down, basically it made marriage legal across the 50 states, but it left a lot of questions to what individual states would do with regard to certain benefits. Social Security is a federal benefit. And at this point, federal rights are to be afforded to everybody to be treated equally. I can tell you from experience that couples are still experiencing issues with regard to when the marriage occurred and whether it was done the right way, and which state did it occur, and what was the date of that particular marriage. Was it before 2013, after, so on and so forth. And so it's not a seamless process, even though we're in 2020. And people still have, they have a lot of questions. There's tremendous amount of questions when you go somewhere down, to the middle of America with a child that one person carried and the other person may not be on the birth certificate. And there's an operation that's needed because little Johnny fell off a roller coaster, and all of a sudden the other parent's injured too. And who is this other person standing here? There's all of these intricacies in day-to-day life that still come up depending on where you are in the United States.
Yeah, and the fact that you are also an international law attorney, I truly believe that the chamber would actually benefit if we could hear you speak and talk about all of these things, because many majority of our members are obviously in our community and would like to be more empowered with our rights, because we're all in the we're all kind of in the limbo. Okay, how much do we get? Can I collect from federal? All of those things. To this day, I am not even sure about that, because if somebody contests in one particular state, what does that mean? I cannot live in California and exercise my rights. But anyway, as I've said, that is really awesome, because I'm also remembering I have a friend. He is actually Malaysian, and he adopted a child, but he cannot adopt the child in Malaysia being married to his partner, because it's not legal in Malaysia. So he had to adopt the child as a single person. And then basically, I don't know what they did here in the United States, but that just goes to show that when
I totally
thinking about what you need to do to strategize, right?
Yeah, so I do a lot of work with Eastern Europe, specifically Poland, and Poland is not very friendly to the LGBT community, which depending on where you are in Poland, but certainly it's not a countrywide ability to accept this way of life, and it's terrible, and it causes a lot of political conflict. But where it really causes a problem is for people that are here that want to adopt a child, because there's many children, there's many orphanages in Poland, there's beautiful children that need homes and loving families, and it's virtually quite impossible for a same-sex marriage couple here in the United States to pursue that level of adoption. So from an international perspective, Furley, to your point, you're 100% correct. Depending on the country, their recognition, is the country signatory to the Hague Convention? What does that mean with regard to LGBT? What are the rights that are afforded? It gets very complicated, and unfortunately, it's not equal.
Joe, being that you're the president of the New Jersey NJ LGBT Chamber of Commerce, and you said that the national association is actually based in Washington, right?
Yes.
What can we do from New Jersey that we could actually support this type of cases or concerns?
Well, what we do is our national chapter in DC, the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, which is the NGLCC is their acronym. They keep us informed, especially of things that are happening in our state. They let us know that there are bills that are coming up on the Assembly or the Senate floor. They also speak in hearings, so we know when they're doing that. Some of our board members have testified at hearings about various things, so we are kept informed by them. I always defer to also to two organizations that are, one is very big in our state, clearly Garden State Equality, and also Human Rights Campaign. They're always up on what's going on in the courts. So if there's something coming up, I kind of either call my contacts there if I personally want to know about what's going on, or if we have some of our constituents start asking us, can you tell us the status? But we get a lot of information, like as of, I think it was yesterday, I got another email giving us information on all kinds of things from various organizations. For example, I got one yesterday regarding a few bills that are on the Jersey Senate floor regarding small businesses and PPP and PPE services and products and things that are coming out, or what's legal and what have you. And some even concern chambers of commerce, because chambers of commerce are not looked at in some legal forms as an actual business, even though we represent businesses. And so we don't qualify for some funding that's going on, and they're trying to change that. I think to Carolina's point, there's so many nuances to every law, depending on federal level, state, local, what your municipality feels about you, and international. I mean, it's different literally everywhere you go. It's literally different, even within your own country. So to keep informed, what I do personally, if I really think something is of urgent, or if someone asks us and looks to the chamber for some information, I look at those advocacy groups that really get into it, like a Garden State Equality or a Human Rights Campaign. They have people on every single issue, and just look at what their websites are saying, and get on their mailing list too. That's an important thing. If you're in a particular situation where you have questions about your vulnerability as an individual or a couple or as a potential parent, I would find these organizations that do that advocacy work and just get on their mailing list, because they constantly give out information, and at least you're getting it proactively as opposed to having to research it yourself, which is the other tough thing to do if you're not savvy enough to, anything beyond a Google search. I mean, I do Google searches all the time, and it leads me to places I want to get information from. But like, I always think, wow, if someone could just, push this out to me as opposed to me having to go mine for it, it would be much easier. So
one of the dangerous things that people can do, whether you're a heterosexual couple getting divorced, or you're an LGBT couple, or you're thinking of getting married, whatever it is, right? You cannot rely on Google. I have people Googling and relying on laws in North Carolina and coming to me in New Jersey and saying, well, we should have this. No, you need to go to the source. So if you're looking for legal advice, go to a lawyer that understands what they're talking about. That's going to take the time to speak with you, give you the scenarios. If you're looking to buy a house, you're going to call a broker. If you want to get life insurance, you're going to call Furley. Do not try to do this on your own, because Joseph, to your point, the nuances are vast. And if you don't protect yourself from the very beginning, especially if you've been in a long-term committed relationship for 10, 20, 15, 30 years, you can't just take the plunge now without protecting the corpus of what you've acquired. So estate planning, tax issues, immigration issues, family law issues, it's critical that you do your homework, and it should be done in a holistic, loving way. This isn't the time to start ripping your relationship apart. But if you go in not knowing, boy, could you be in for a horrible rude awakening when something goes wrong.
What we do at the Chamber, one of the things we do like to do is every Tuesday afternoon, we have a webinar series, and it's on a different subject matter for a particular topic. In the past, I've done it in New York and New Jersey. If you're a first-time home buyer, and we have a mortgage broker, a real estate lawyer, a real estate salesperson to come in and really discuss what the first-time home buyer needs to know. I've had events where you're a single person, and your mom and dad have now both passed. What do you do with the estate? Especially if you have siblings. Most people don't realize this, but if you typically in a family with multiple children, and one child happens to be gay or a member of our community, typically that's the child that ends up taking care of the parent, because as they age, because especially in the past, prior to marriage, your siblings typically all got married, they had families to take care of, and as a single person, because that's what typically an LGBT person was for years, decades, you were the one who had the time or could work it into your schedule to take care of mom and dad. And a lot of the responsibility for wills and things like that, being the executor of a will, has fallen onto the LGBT child. It's just a phenomenon that happens just because of the way life goes. But particularly this Tuesday, our webinar is with a lawyer who's a member of our chamber, and she's actually doing a webinar on what you need to know from a legality when you're setting up a business for the first time. And so it's that kind of niche events that we like to pull together, because people's individual circumstances are so particular to them, because we're all individuals, that to your point, Carolina, you really have to go to an expert. Don't even waste your time doing your own research. Just go to an expert, go to a specialist. That's what they're there for. Why waste you're going to waste more time of your time trying to research it on your own. I always tell people, I never go anywhere. If I go to the doctor, I just say, this hurts, and that's it. I never tell my doctor what I think the problem is. What do I know? You know what I mean? I just say, here's the symptoms, you figure it out. I'm not going to give you anything more. You know what I mean? Because then you're self-diagnosing. That's a waste of time.
That's the entire philosophy behind the Divorce Dynasty platform, which Furley's a part of. Essentially, it's vetted professionals across all sectors, being plugged in where you need them, when you need them, pre, during, post-divorce. We've also now expanded into, if you lose your spouse, what happens? If your spouse becomes disabled, because it's the same set of facts. It's lack of information. I don't know what to do. The government's coming after me. Will I lose my home? Or the ex-wife and the first kids of the first marriage are now coming after me because they think that they should be the heirs. There's all sorts of questions. Yep. And I think that what's giving me some food for thought here as we're talking is that maybe, Furley, we should talk about expanding the Divorce Dynasty platform and having LGBT representatives on the platform to really focus on these particular issues, because to Joseph's point, the questions are very distinct. And the information has to be very thought out and well-grounded, especially if you have people coming from different states, maybe owning homes in 2 different states. Maybe somebody works in a different state, but they come here for the summer. There's 100 different machinations of this. But isn't it our responsibility, all of us sitting on this call today, to do our part to help? Because if we don't help, then what are we really doing? This is what we do for a living. We have an obligation to give back.
Well, this has been an incredible discussion. Well, first of all, don't self-diagnose and don't self-medicate. Whether it be legal or in terms of our bodies, like people have the ever since we got Google, we think that we can Google everything. Sometimes it could be very, very fatal and very self-destructing to do that. Now, last words, Joe. How can we further be a part of the NJ LGBT Chamber of Commerce and be able to contribute and be a part of the voice of the LGBT community?
The minimum anyone can do is join our mailing list. We send out information all the time. We have a newsletter. You can go to our calendar and see our events and attend, participate. We're always looking for people to participate, especially if they have a specific area of knowledge. We make it very easy. That we work closely with you, especially if you're someone who's never given an instructional webinar before. We work very closely with you to formulate how that's going to go off. So we try to help people because we do realize that people need that very specific information because people's scenarios are indicative to themselves and most of the time not to everyone else. There's so many variables. For example, Carolina, you get an inheritance for your parents pass away and you have two siblings and the three of you just inherited this fabulous beach house. Well, you're the gay one and you have a partner for 10 years and all of a sudden you pass away. Does your partner get to use that beach house anymore? Or are they still a third owner? I mean, there's every conceivable scenario out there and you need that expert. So yeah.
Who should they go to for them to be able to follow and everything that's happening? What website should we go?
I would get on the e-list for our chamber. I would get on the e-list for the Garden State Equality. I would get on the e-list for Human Rights Campaign for social issues. And I would also, I don't know many, but I know that there is a LGBT section of the New Jersey Bar Association. A number of their lawyers are members of our chamber, and I always refer our people who have questions to those lawyers because they also specialize. And I would look for those kind of areas to see like if there is an LGBT website for law website where you can follow what's going on in the community. I mean, I don't really know, and maybe I should know, but if there is one, get on those. Go to those websites that are resources. I always hit resource pages because you can find out so many organizations by doing that.
Give me one website that's easy to remember right now.
Apart from our own, I would say for New Jersey, for relationships and stuff, Garden State Equality. I would definitely say Garden State Equality. They are the premier advocate for our community in this state. And if you live in New Jersey, I would follow them first.
Carolina, last words?
I would say that the first thing you need to do is think about what your choices are. Do not be afraid to make decisions. Do not be afraid to take the leap. Do not be afraid to live the best life you possibly can. So if you have a dream out there that you'd like to turn your long-term relationships into marriage, do so. If it's not too late to have kids, do so. If you want to adopt, do so. But get the information you need to protect yourself, your soon-to-be spouse, your significant other, and the potential family you're going to be building together, as well as the assets you've already accumulated. Be able to protect yourself for your legacy and for the future. Do not make silly mistakes by not reaching out to the right people and then losing everything you potentially wanted or what you built.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Wise words always. I love having people like this in the show because like the divorce dynasty is powerful. The NJ LGBT Chamber of Commerce is also very, very powerful. So together we can make changes and impact transformations all over the world in our own small ways. So again, another exciting episode from the D Word. Remember, we lead you to your dazzling destiny. Until then, this is Furley Almonte and Carolina Denhard, your host for the D Word. See you again next week. Take care now. Enjoy Sunday. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Okay.
We're still live.